Okay, I, like the rest of you, am sick and tired of Etsy's nonsense. However, I'm insulated from that a fair bit because of my website, so we're going to talk about that this week. Or more specifically, we're going to talk about how you can tell if you are ready for a website. Because again, a lot of people are saying, I can't have a website, I'm not ready, it's too much, I don't have the time, etc, etc, which I get. These are all valid points. But it's useful to know the questions that you should be asking yourself and the things that you should be looking out for so that you can tell when you are ready for a website. Because if you're not ready for one right now, you should still be building up to it, if you see what I mean. I hope you do, because I'm so tired. And for those who are new here, here's the intro. My name's Kim, this is the Coffee and Craft podcast, where I drink coffee and sometimes craft. I keep you company while you work or craft, and we talk about all things to do with running a handmade business. I've got that down nicely now, haven't I? So yes, how can you tell when you are ready for a website? Well, the first one has got to be the cost, because that's probably the biggest pushback that I get whenever I hear people saying that they're not ready for a website. It's because of the cost, which is a valid point. I'm with Shopify at the moment. It costs me what it equates to about £20 a month. However, I pay annually. If I were to literally be billed monthly, it would be more like £25 a month. So it's a fair chunk. I haven't used anything else like Squarespace or Wix or any of the many others that I can't think of right now. There's going to be a cost regardless of which one you go with. And for me, I wanted to make sure that I was making enough so that I would be able to cover the cost of the fees each month. Also, it's not just the website fees that you've got to take into consideration. You are going to need a domain name and you're going to have to pay that annually as well. So when we talk about the cost of running a website, for me it's at least those two things, but you might have extra bells and whistles that you want on top of that depending on what you do, what you need, etc, etc. I personally, to run my website, have Shopify, my domain, and that's it. So what I would do is, number one, be clear about what your monthly fees would be, and then you want to compare that with what you're already making on something like Etsy. And I'm not just talking about sales and revenue, but I'm also talking about how much you're currently paying Etsy each month in fees. Now, I had been running my business for 10 years before I finally took the jump and created a website, and I could have done it a lot sooner. I don't want to talk about it, but I kept telling myself it was cheaper to sell on Etsy, even with their fees, than it was to run my own website, until I went and had a look at my monthly statements to see exactly how much that I was paying in fees alone. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't get to use that excuse anymore. Because even on my worst months, I was paying more or less the same amount as a monthly website subscription. Now, there's more to it than that I'm going to cover in this video as well. Things like I was driving all of my own traffic and generating the sales that came with that, and I was getting very few organic sales from Etsy. So I also had that knowledge that if I switched to a website, I could essentially bring that audience with me, because it wasn't organic Etsy footfall that was coming in and buying. It was people who found me from Instagram or YouTube, etc. So it was me that was bringing everyone in. But like I said, I'll get back to that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead. So yeah, okay. First one, in a nutshell, is you're going to have to know how much it would cost for you to have a website. Pick a website, find the monthly or annual subscription fee, your domain subscription, total them up. That would be your cost, and then work out how much you're making on Etsy. Like I said, you might find that you're not making as much on Etsy, and so you'd be paying more to have a website. But like I said earlier, you just want to keep an eye on this so that when the figures start to balance and maybe your Etsy fees are getting a little bit higher, then you know it's time to make the switch. All right, another thing to look out for is how many views and visits that you're getting on Etsy that are not converting into sales, because obviously there could be a ridiculous amount of reasons why this could be. It could be your products, it could be your photographs, or it even could be because Etsy likes to, Etsy want a sale. They don't care which seller makes the sale, they just want the sale. So on your listing, there will be numerous others. Someone who's browsing they're always going to have their attention pulled left, right and centre. It's... But I have found that my conversion rate on my website is much, much higher. One of the reasons is because I think when someone is on my website, well, number one, they're a warmer lead because they've come from me, but also there isn't anything on the website that's just trying to pull them away. You're either there to have a browse, which is absolutely fine, have a look, enjoy, or they're there to purchase. So on Etsy, if you're getting a lot of views, and I would also actually have a look at your favorites as well, basically any metric that helps you gauge engagement from people on the platform. If you're getting that, you're getting regular views, you're getting regular favorites, people are liking your stuff, but it's not converting into sales, there's something more to find there. That's when you've got to get your detective hat on. I nearly said something very different. I'm so tired. In case I haven't mentioned it in the last 30 seconds. Basically, if your stuff is getting a lot of love, but it's not converting into sales, that's when you've got to start investigating why that could be. And it could simply be because they're bamfing off because somebody's selling something very similar to you but cheaper or better than you or more eye-catching. But that is something that you don't have to contend with on your website. And I mentioned this at the start of the video, but if you are only making sales when you send your own traffic there from whatever source that might be from, then it's also an idea that you could benefit from a website. Because another form of pushback that I get with websites is that, well, I'd have to drive my own traffic, which tickles me a little bit because you have to do that with Etsy anyway. I do understand why people are scared of that, because they think if they are the only source of traffic, if you don't have any audience of any kind, then you can think, well, no one's going to see my stuff. You do need an audience, that you do need some form of an audience. You don't need a large audience, and people forget about Google search, which, pardon me, it does take time to build up, but it builds up. And I get views and sales from Google search. And with regards to the audience thing, the reason why I say that you don't need a big audience is because you know how I feel about having the right audience and the wrong audience. I wouldn't say that you guys are the wrong audience for my handmade items, but it's just that my handmade items are made for a different kind of person. This channel, for example, is made for other handmade sellers. So our focus is different. Those of you who knit, crochet, embroider, there might be a crossover there, but for the most part, you're not going to be my ideal customer. So you might think, oh, it's all right for you, Kim, you've got a YouTube channel of so many subscribers, so, you know, you have that audience. Nope. If I try to promote that stuff to this audience, it doesn't work. If I try to promote this stuff to my much smaller audience on my other channel, which is made for this kind of customer, it converts more. I don't even have to promote a lot of the time, because the right people who would be interested in that stuff are already there and they can choose for themselves or not. And it just feels like sailing a ship with the wind in your sails. Whereas trying to sell to the wrong crowd, it shouldn't be rocket science. It's going to be a lot bloody harder, because you're trying to sell something to someone who doesn't want it, doesn't need it, and probably doesn't want to be sold to. So people think that a good salesperson is someone who could sell anything to anyone. It's not. I do wish people would leave that kind of snake oil 70s car salesman stereotype in the past where it belongs, because in this day and age, it's you have to have more respect for your customer, and you have to know who they are and speak to them, and not be afraid to go, I'm not going to speak to everybody else, because we are so sick of being sold to. And a lot of us don't have money to throw around anymore. So what we do spend, because we do have money to spend, but what we do spend, we want to spend more carefully on the things that we love. So a good salesperson in this day and age knows how to marry their items with the right people. Emphasis on the word right people. I will stop now. The regulars here will know this is a drum I will bang until I die. And even then I'll probably come back and haunt some of you, because a drum banging ghost sounds kind of cool to me. A big reason why you might be ready to start a website is that you're just sick and tired of having to jump through Etsy's hoops. I've been talking about that a lot this month. It just seems to be the feeling out there in the community that I'm seeing at the moment. Just this bone tired feeling of I'm over it. Because it's not just a case of deciding whether or not Etsy's latest hoop or hoops are worth jumping through. It's the constant having to keep on top of it all, figuring out what works and what doesn't, because Etsy doesn't communicate much at all. So you have to kind of guess. And there's a lot of nonsense out there. So it's like having to sieve through all of the nonsense to figure out what works. And some of it might be genuinely good stuff, but may not work for you. So it's a lot. And we've already got too much to do. So it's just, if you're over that, a website can definitely help, because, and I've spoken about this in the past, but when Etsy comes out with a brain fart or whatever they're doing, it doesn't rock my boat the way it used to. For some people, it's that serious. So if you are in that boat and you haven't got a website, you bloody need one. Hopefully it's not quite that serious for you because your whole business is not on Etsy. But there are some people out there who still have their entire business on Etsy, and it's not in the early stages. You know, it's established and people rely on it for their income. They might even have staff, and if that's only on Etsy, then oh my god, what are you doing? Eggs, other baskets, please, I beg you. I mean, a good example of this would be if you need a longer dispatch time. You can do this on your website without getting dinged, but if you have a longer dispatch time on Etsy, you're going to get fewer sales because they're going to sort of, what's the word that they use? So you're going to get drowned out in the search. That's not the word that I was looking for, but again, have I mentioned in the last 30 seconds that I am tired? And the last one, and I've spoken about this before because this is exactly where I'm at. If you sell a variety of products and some of them are higher ticket, more expensive items, the more creative, the more handmade, and they don't sell well on Etsy, you might think, well, that's because your items are rubbish or people don't care about handmade anymore or yada yada yada. It's not. I'm proof of that on my website. It is mainly the larger ticket items, the handmade, the more creative, the more expensive things that sell and do so consistently. Slower than my lower ticket items, obviously, but consistently. Whereas with Etsy, it's definitely my lower ticket items that sell and not so much those. So if you're just focusing on Etsy and Etsy buyer behavior, it would be easy to think that, yeah, people don't care about handmade anymore. It's dead, except that it's not. It's just that Etsy now draws a very different kind of customer than it did 10 years ago. Heck, even 5 years ago. So if you want to keep on selling your higher ticket items, if you need to keep on selling your higher ticket items, you need somewhere that's going to attract those customers. And I'm not convinced that Etsy is it. Might be for some people, but certainly not for me. And I think there's quite a lot of you out there that can relate to that, sadly. Now I do want to add, because I do get people in the comments when I make videos like this and they say, yeah, you know, ditch Etsy, or they shout at me for, you know, don't ditch Etsy. And it's like, I've never said ditch Etsy. I've always said you need to have it in your tool belt as a tool. Or, to give you another analogy, eggs, baskets, remember? It's a basket. Or is it an egg? No, your business is the eggs, Etsy's a basket. It's a basket. Okay, let's move on. My point is you don't want to see this as a kind of instead of Etsy. You can absolutely still have Etsy, rely on it for, you know, the organic traffic, the footfall there. This is like a safety net, so that if Etsy pulls the rug out from underneath you, you're fine. And I think to end this video, the question you should be asking yourself is, would your business still run tomorrow if you woke up and found that Etsy had shut your shop? Or would you be scrabbling about trying to find somewhere else to sell your stuff? Now, if you do ask yourself all of those questions and it does come out that you don't have the budget for it just yet, or you don't have the time to focus on building a website, or you're just not there and you know you're just not there yet, just keep an eye on these things that I've mentioned. How much you're spending each month on fees on Etsy compared to the cost of running a website. Keeping an eye on your conversion rate, maybe, like if you're not getting the sales that you think you should be, check out your views and your favorites, and if they're low as well, then that's fine, maybe you've got something else to do there. But if they're high, if you're getting a lot of engagement and a lot of traffic and it's not converting into sales, that could be one reason that they're getting pulled away. Or if you're only making sales that you are sending yourself, or you're getting tired of Etsy's nonsense, hence the video, or if you aren't selling any more of your higher ticket items and you think that you should be. Those are the things that you should be keeping tabs on, so that you can figure out when is the right time for you to start building your website. Because if you want to build a business, at some point it's got to happen. Now, for those who want to know how I send traffic to my website, I will link to this video here, and I will see you over there. And for the rest of you, until next week, ta-ra! I just poked myself in the eye.